Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Cole. I'm speaking to you early in the morning of Monday, September 12th, as we now enter week 4 of Political Science 1013 on the 16-week schedule for the fall term of 2022. Everybody, we're underway with a discussion. The discussion began about 24 hours ago. We'll run through Tuesday, and I'll be interested in seeing what everybody has to say. We're now in Unit 2 on the political parties. And as we know, the political parties and the political system as a whole have been going through quite a bit of turmoil. And attitudes of partisans on either side of the partisan divide are sort of reflected in the controversy that's been going on about the search that was carried out at former President Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Okay, so I'll be interested to hear what people think about this. I imagine there's been quite a bit of talk flying around. Try to be polite and not too carried away. We want to try to shed light and not heat. My students generally are pretty good at that. But on the other hand, this is something about which feelings are running strong, I'm sure. I don't know how much students have heard about it or what they think. I'll be interested in hearing what everybody has to say. As you look at those two articles by Lowry and Linker on this issue that's arisen with the search that's been carried out at Mar-a-Lago within the past week or two. Beyond that, everybody, let me say this about Unit 2. We'll be conducting our discussion through Tuesday. Then Thursday, we've got a quiz coming up, quiz number 2. You'll be reading 2 articles about the state of the political parties, and a third about lobbying, which is another part of this unit as we talk about parties and pressure groups. And you'll be reading about how Senator Sinema was lobbied on the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act, which is one of your term paper topics. I hope everybody got that material that was sent out about the term paper a few days ago. All right, let me say this about what we try to do in Unit 2. Okay, we talk about political parties in general, how they're organized, what are the functions that political parties are expected to carry out, the particulars of the 2 political parties, the major ones in the United States, the Democrats and the Republicans, and why it is that we have only 2. Why are there only 2 major political parties? And that has to do with the rules of the game as we've set them up here in the United States of America. Okay. After that, we try to look at the history of the 2 parties, going back to early in the 20th century to the 1930s, the time of President Franklin D. Roosevelt and the New Deal. The kinds of people who support the 2 parties. The parties took on the character that they have now, by and large, back in the 1930s, although they've gone through a lot of twists and turns and changes in the meantime, and some of those changes have taken place over the past couple of decades. So we try to bring the character and the composition of the 2 political parties up to date, okay, right up to what we're now in the 3rd decade of the 21st century. And some important changes have taken place in recent times. The parties are not exactly the way they were in Roosevelt's day by any means. And that's an important thing for us to think about. Pressure groups, we try to go through the major categories of pressure groups and the leading pressure groups in any number of categories. There are only 2 major political parties, but there are hundreds or perhaps thousands of pressure groups. And lobbying can be carried on behalf of individual corporations as well as pressure groups. So we talk about pressure groups and lobbying. Pressure groups used to be called lobbies, although they engage in other activities besides lobbying, and so the term pressure group or interest group caught on. But lobbying is among the more important activities that pressure groups engage in, along with advertising and public relations, and the making of political contributions to politicians whom the pressure groups may think are sympathetic. Okay, so 2 major political parties and many, many pressure groups, both of them organizations that try to influence the government. Political parties try to do so by getting politicians elected to office. Pressure groups, you might say, work more behind the scenes on behalf of the interests of their members, as opposed to the political parties, which are going to be working for the interests of the country as a whole. Okay? Most pressure groups are working on behalf of the economic interests of their members. For every profession, occupation, or trade, for every commodity or product produced in the country, there may be a pressure group. Although some pressure groups are not so narrowly economically oriented, but many, if not most, are. So we have both political parties and pressure groups at work in our system. They both try to influence the government. The pressure groups' interests are more narrow. The political parties are trying to get control of the government as a whole. So that's what we're talking about in Unit 2. So we'll be interested in seeing what you think about the discussion topic for the discussion that's going to run through Tuesday. Then we have a quiz for you to take on Thursday about political parties and pressure groups before we move on to new material on the mass media that we'll be getting out more than likely Friday once we get through the second quiz on Thursday. So I hope you'll take part in the discussion and study hard for the quiz. Otherwise, take it easy in the meantime. We'll be talking to you a little bit about mass media when we talk to you a week from now at this time.